Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So in this video about audio playback in Dorico, we're going to be looking specifically at the Atomic Big Band sound set from Straight Ahead Samples. Now this is one of the best sound samples when it comes to making a big band sound great in Dorico. So let's take a quick listen to how it sounds. Okay, so there's a little sampling of the Atomic Big Band sound set using separate rhythm section instruments. Now, the Atomic Big Band sound set is just the horns. You can purchase drums, bass, piano, guitar, etc. from Straight Ahead Samples also, but I happen to be using Groove Agent for my drums, as well as some of the Steinberg sounds for piano, bass, and guitar. Some of the features you get out of the Atomic Big Band is full integration into Dorico. The publisher actually produces expression maps for you that you can just load into Dorico. So once you load in the instruments, you actually are able to just use it right away. You don't have to do a lot of self-programming, which for a lot of us is just huge. It's a great time saver. Plus, they also give you a couple of plugins that will help you use this sound set with other DAWs, as well as using other instruments simultaneously with it with their smart delay, which I'll talk about more in a minute. So let's take a look at how this integrates here into Dorico. So the first thing I want to show you is how the expression map functions here in Dorico. So if we go under Library and come down to our expression maps, I can come down here and you'll see that under Atomic Big Band, they have one here for the trumpet, for the trombone, bari sax, and alto and tenor. And then you'll see there is a whole listing of the different techniques that it'll actually add to your music. And I don't expect you to actually change any of these, but it's nice to see that they have something for legato, marcato, natural, which is just regular notes being played, staccatissimo, staccato, tongued. This is vanilla for playing kind of a smooth sound, of course. And then you have scoops, rips, plops, forte, piano, crescendos, and so on. So this sound set is really complete, and it does a fantastic job of integrating. And it's important to use these different expression maps because they're slightly different. That's why they made one for each of the different instrument families. So let's take a look at how this looks actually in practice. So if we go over to the play menu, you have two options on how you can load this sound into Dorico. The easy way is to load combined instruments. And what this means is we can load all the saxophones into one instance of the contact player, which you will need to run this sound set, or you can do it individually per track. Now there's benefits and drawbacks to each of these, but for this project, I actually loaded them as combined. So you'll see I have loaded into this project, I have 1, 2, 3 versions of the contact player, which all represent Atomic Big Band. Now you can rename these instruments so that they actually say what they need to, or you can kind of just leave them the way they are if you sort of know what it is. So for example, this contact player 8 here, I have a trombone 1, 2, 3, and bass trombone all loaded into the instrument. From here, we're given the ability to mute and solo, as well as we can actually pan the instruments left and right, which is actually really important for MIDI. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of panning of my trombone sounds so they don't get any phase cancellation. And then over here on the right, you'll see we have the different options for the different instruments. So I have the option to do real-time playback or this option for what they call smart delay. Now, smart delay is a special feature of the instrument where it'll input your music and it will analyze it more precisely to get you better playback, but this does mean it'll delay it by almost a full measure. So you won't get actual real-time playback, meaning you couldn't do MIDI note input or anything with this feature on, but your playback would be a whole lot better. Now, if you do use the real-time playback, if you're going to use other instruments that don't have this feature, you will have to put them in a different playing instance and use a special plugin, which again, I'll show you in a minute. We also have the options to tailor the sound of each instrument. Now, in here, you'll see that we have the room mic, which is kind of an ambient sound of the instrument. So let me kind of show you what that does. So if I click and turn off the close miking, I'm going to turn up the room sound, and then I'm going to hit the playback button so you can hear what it sounds like. Now let me compare that to what they call the close, which is emulating the instrument being right up on a mic. So you can see by default, these instruments are set to use a little bit of room and a lot of close miking. And I find that it's nice to go through and adjust this a little bit because sometimes the close mic makes the instrument just a little bit too kind of, I'll call it nasty sounding. And especially on the bari sax, I think the room mic is a little less harsh and I really do prefer the sound of that. There's also the bleed mic, which is sort of emulates the sound of the room coming back into the microphone, which I don't use a lot of. And then there's this one called tape, which is the sound as if you were to record the instrument onto tape and then play it back. So let's listen to what that sounds like. So you can decide if that's the kind of right sound for you, but like you saw, right now, as a default, it's set to using only room and close miking for this sound setup. Now you can see I set a little bit of panning on there, which if you haven't experimented with this with your MIDI instruments, let me tell you, it's a great way to improve the sound because if everything is dead center, you do get a lot of phase cancellation because the sounds are too similar, and so they'll kind of cancel each other out and make some really weird sounds. And so a lot of panning really helps to make things sound better. Now again, like I was saying before, we can go in here and we can rename these instruments by clicking on this little gear here. And I can go in and I could call this Atomic Big Band Bones. And so now I'll remember what playback that is. If I come up here, this one, this is my saxophones, and you can see it hasn't been panned yet, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of panning on this. And you'll also see, if we click down here and I go down to the bari sax, for example, you'll see that I have done a little bit of customization because I found the close mic to be just a little too harsh. So I have a little bit of the bleed mic and a whole lot of the room mic because it softened the tone of the bari sax so it didn't stick out quite so far. And I think it sounded a whole lot better that way. And you can experiment with that and to your heart's content and kind of make it sound a little better. You can also turn on this pan option where you can have the room mic coming out of the left, and then you could also set one of the other ones to come out of the right channel, for example. Now that may not work in your situation, but it's nice to know those options are there. You also have this control for your tone, and for me, I'm not editing this right now. I'm leaving this alone because I think it came in with really good default settings, but you can see there's a lot of different options we have here. You can also see we have some performance options we can turn on. But again, these were preset by the sound sample when I loaded it, and it seems to be working pretty darn well. Now, if you're unaware how most of these instruments work, you'll see this is a little demo keyboard where I can just play a note if I want to. And And then you can see I have key switches here that'll turn on the different techniques for this instrument. Now, because we have an expression map program, Dorico is actually going to use these and do this part automatically for us, which is great. And this green one out here, this key switch is actually going to turn on and off our smart delay. So you can see that's what that key switch does. Now again, if I want to change the name, I can click on the little gear here, and I can change this one to be saxes so that I remember. And then finally, obviously this one is my trumpet sounds. And you can see I'm going to go ahead and do just a little bit of panning in here as well. If you're unsure of how much panning you want to do in your MIDI instrument, just think of it like a real band. So if the fourth trumpet is standing far to the right as you face them, you'll probably want them coming out of the far right of your speaker or your stereo image, and your second trumpet is on the left, and so I'm going to push that to the farther left. There's no real exact science here, but I think it is worth noting that this is something you can customize, and it does pay off if you do it. Now, if we had have loaded individual instances of this instrument into each channel, we could do our panning here in Dorico, but because we're using just trumpet 1 for the trumpet sounds, the panning's actually going to be done in the software instrument itself. So let's go ahead and hear how it sounds now that we've made a few of those changes. As I mentioned before, with the smart delay on, you can see in the playback, I'm not doing that with my video editor. It's literally a bar behind on all of the playback, but that's how the smart instrument works. And so it does add a lot of quality to the sound. So let me show you what that would sound like if I turned that setting off. Now with the smart delay off, I am gonna have to disable this plugin here that I added. Now this plugin is by Straight Ahead Samples, and you can see that all it does is it delays the playback of whatever's in this channel so that it will match up with the smart delay of the instrument. And this is a really great tool. We can use this in Dorico as well as in our DAW. And you can see all I had to do is add it to the insert point of the track in question, and I went ahead and I chose Straight Ahead Samples and non-smart delay track sync, and it works just that easily. But for this case, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off because we actually are not using the smart delay. So let's see what it sounds like without the smart delay on. So you can hear the swing feel is a little bit more awkward, and it's not nearly as smooth as it was with the smart delay on. So that's what that feature gets you. But you can see now the playback and the playhead are synced together, and we don't have that delay. So if you were trying to enter in your notes with your MIDI keyboard, if it drove you crazy that when you push down the key, a second later the sound comes out, you'll have to turn off that smart delay temporarily. Now, a couple other things to bear in mind if you're going to look into this sound sample. One, you will have to have Native Instruments Contact Player. Now, I'm using Contact Player 8, which works great. That's their newest version. They do have a free version of Contact Player, which is what I'm running. I don't own the full version of Contact Player, which is nice to know because if you're going to pay for straight ahead samples and having to buy Contact Player on top of it, it would be quite an expense. When you go to their website, you'll go to Products, and it's under Brass for Atomic Big Band, and you'll see they have two options. They have the light as well as the full version, which I do have the full version. Now, I've tried both, and I will admit, I think the full version is definitely a huge improvement over the light, but if you do want to tiptoe in, you will get a decent idea of what it sounds like using the light version. But you can see here in the comparison, you're missing a couple of things that are a little bit important for making it sound really good. One of the which is the tongued version, which is pretty important to making it sound more realistic. You can also see you're missing out on some of the mutes in the brass as well. Now, when you're adding this to your cart, the other place you'll want to go over here is to the support and go over to Dorico expressions. And in here, you'll see there's the expression maps that you'll want to download and install, as well as here is the smart delay toggle that you can add, so you can turn on all the smart delays at once, as well as this smart delay track sync, which is a plugin that you'll put into your DAW or into Dorico, which I showed you a moment ago. Like I said, I'm really impressed with how integrated they've made this. And I think it's really a testament to how much they do support the product and how great they are at integrating this together. If you want to use the Smart Sync Delay toggle, what you can do is here in Dorico, if you open up an instance of your contact player, what you're going to do is you're going to go over here to the word contact player, and you're going to click on it and scroll down to this switch to classic view. And then from here, you'll see there's a little button here that says KSP. And from here, you're going to click on it. Now, if you hadn't already, you are going to have to open the file that was linked to the download when you installed the delay multi-script. And if you go to your Pulse downloader and click on open, it will open this file on your hard drive, go under multi-scripts, and go ahead and double click on that. Back over in Dorico, we're going to then go under our presets, and we're going to go under user, and you'll see there is our smart delay sync, and then it'll just give us a toggle switch where we can just choose on or off, and it'll turn on every single instance in this instrument. Now, this does mean I'll have to go and do this for the sax section as well. So again, I'm going to click here, go to classic view, KSP, then I'm going to load my smart sync delay, and then I can go ahead and flick that on. And now I have the smart delay on for all of the instruments, and I just need to go ahead and reactivate my plugin for each of the non-straight ahead instruments. And then if I go back to my playback, you'll hear that it is the same as it was before. So in terms of usefulness, I think this one's really great for sending out demos and for letting people hear what it's supposed to sound like in real life. It is so much cleaner than most of the other instruments. For a daily use thing, it's a little complex and takes a lot of system resources, so I might not choose this when I'm just composing. I might choose a simpler sound set, like, for example, Note Performer, when I'm just entering the notes, because it'll give me good quality playback while I'm composing, and it's really immediate. Now, once I am ready to send it out to performers so that we can play it or record it, this would be an awesome way of stepping up that demo recording, especially if you don't have access to a band and you're going to, say, self-publish one of your charts. I do put this pretty high up, and I'm really glad that I've purchased it, but I'll be honest with you, it took me a while to kind of learn how to use it, but now that I'm aware of it and know how to work with it, it is a really handy tool. In terms of price per value, it's a bit of a toss-up. It is better than the Steinberg instruments. I'm going to say it's a step above the Note Performer, but maybe not the extra $300, give or take on how much you're going to use it. But compared to an instrument set like Pro Horns or Vintage Big Band, which are much lower in price, it is a bit of a 50-50. I do like the sounds in here a little bit better, but not all the sounds are my favorite. The Barry sax, for example, to me is a little bit harsh, but they do make an aftermarket Barry sax that you can add to this to give it a little bit more oomph, but that is an additional cost. All in all, again, the playback is amazing. I think it's a really great tool, and because it integrates directly into Dorico by downloading those expression maps, installing them, the sync plugin as well as that on-off switch for syncing everything using the playback device, it can be really handy. It is also nice that it's a multi-timbral instrument. What does that mean? You could technically load every single instrument instance in your big band and set it up so you only have to have one instance of the actual Kontakt player, which is pretty amazing. But for me, I kind of like to spread things out a little bit so that I have a little bit more control. It would be a lot to have to do every single channel one at a time, but at least this way I'm able to set it up so that I only have to do 3 instances. And as a bonus, you can see here, if I go back under and I was to create, say, a new instance of the Kontakt player. So if I go to the Atomic Big Band under Combined, you can see I can load a whole sax section, a whole trumpet section, a whole trombone section, a 70s pop horn trio, pop horn quartet, modern funk band, Dorico playback, Sibelius playback, and more. So by clicking on this and double clicking, you can see it'll load the entire instrument setup that I need, and I don't have to add each individual instrument one at a time, which is pretty darn fantastic. After a bit of loading, you'll see it loaded lead alto, second alto, tenor sax, second tenor, bari, trumpets, trombones, all the way down. So again, I could run my entire instrument set this way, and that way I could have one instance of it. And again, if I was to go under that classic view and I was to have the smart delay enabled, now I could turn that on for every single one of my horns in one place, which is a pretty handy feature, especially if I wasn't going to do a whole lot of customization. So there we are with the Atomic Big Band by Straight Ahead Samples. Again, I think it's a worthy upgrade to Dorico if you're interested in spending the money, and especially if you work with a lot of wind sounds like saxophones, trumpets, and trombones. It's not specifically made for things like concert band, but you might find it could be useful if you're doing something that's, say, more in the pop realm. An idea comes to mind like the soundtrack from The Incredibles. That's a little more jazz than it would be strictly concert band, but it would give you some upgraded sax and trumpet sounds that might be really, really useful. Again, there's a fair amount of customization for all of these, so you can adjust things like swing feel under control, where you have the swing accents, the long scoop speeds, and other things. So you can really get in there and you can really do a lot of detailed work. Again, I'm really happy that I purchased it. I think it was a worthy upgrade to my sound sample set, but it did take me a while to learn it. The other warning I will give you is it does take a lot of RAM and system resources, so depending on the age of your computer, you might want to check that out before you go ahead and purchase it. On my base model M4 Max MacBook Pro, it works just fine with no delays. Even if I'm recording the audio of this video at the exact same time, I have no issues with it. But if you have, say, a MacBook Air, you might want to do a little bit of research to make sure that it's compatible, although with most Macs, it works great. PCs, different story. You'll definitely want to check your system settings before you launch into it. Thanks so much for watching and hanging here on the channel. If you're enjoying the content, please like, subscribe, and send me messages. This is how I get inspiration for new videos, as well as covering new topics. I've got some great new tech that I'm working with lately, and so you're going to see more videos on that as well. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.